Evening all, and welcome to another week. Another week, which means another away day show from Loaded Mag. Hosting tonight is myself and Rich. How you doing, Rich?
I'm all right, mate. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Just about recovered now from a heavy session on Saturday in Manchester. It's only Wednesday, but only just recovered now. But yeah, it's been an interesting week to say the least. After everything going on with the fallout from Old Trafford, I'm sure we'll get into it. There's so much to get into, as well as looking ahead to the Leeds game on Friday. Now, normally we would have an opposition's view, a guest on tonight from the opposition, and unfortunately, all Leeds TV weren't able to make it. So they have said that we'll catch them for a review of the game. So looking around maybe Saturday, Sunday, keep a lookout, keep an eye out for the review. At some point, we'll get together and we'll be able to trade opinions on hopefully what will be a Newcastle 3 points. But look, let's get into it. Let's talk briefly about the game on Saturday, Rich, because not had your sort of opinions on how it went. So obviously, you know, we went down 4-1 to Man United. It was the Cristiano Ronaldo reunion, and welcome back. It was a massive fanfare. But you know, as myself and Chris have mentioned earlier on this week, on matters, you know, there was a good performance there for long parts of the game from Newcastle, and you know, 4-1. In our opinions, it was kind of, you know, it wasn't really a justifiable score from the way in which you played. How did you see the game on Saturday?
Well, I watched it at home live, and it. Do you know what? I think it was. We were really dogged first half. You know, you could, you know, we were going to set our stall out and try and hit them on the break, which we always had to do against the bigger teams because obviously we've got a lot of pace going forward and stuff like that. So I wasn't surprised how we set up. And you know what? We actually, the game plan was going well. It was going really well, and I was so optimistic that after that, pretty much the first full half, you know, we looked like we were going to get something out of the game. It was just a freak slight deflection, you know, on a shot that was going straight into Woodman's arms. You know, gives him a handle and error. And you could write it wasn't the ball was obviously going to fall to Ronaldo. It was just yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, you as a coach yourself, Pitt, you always say you should always be, as a defender, following in any way. Do you know what I mean? Just it's like a penalty. You should always be cut out for a rebound and try to get in the way. But I think that's just the level of defence we've got. We don't seem to have that experience like to do that sort of thing. And you know, when you've got someone like Ronaldo sniffing around, you've got to be there to pick the first ball up sort of thing. So yeah, I felt a little bit hard. I felt like the life had been sucked out was when that goal went in because it was literally on the half-time whistle. So it was a bit like a kick in the teeth. But do you know, to be fair, the way Newcastle came out second half and we really, really took the game there to Man United. And I thought the goal was a fantastic goal. And I think the whole of the NUFC fan base have seen it on Twitter and they've seen Chris trending this week because of the goal and the chant and everything like that. So, but that was a fantastic goal. Do you know what I mean? It was, I think, you know, Manquillo's showed why a lot of the fans have actually been saying he should be played ahead of Murphy or Kraft because he's good defensively, but he can go forward as well. Yes, he doesn't. Not his first goal in a black and white shirt, and you know, some place to get it, and the time to get it as well. And you know what? I think when we equalised, I thought I was back on it, and I was really, really positive. I thought we are gonna get to this game because Man United just didn't. I don't know. They weren't on. Yes, so it was all Ronaldo's arrival back and stuff like that, and that was why everybody was turning up at the feet on the Saturday. But they just weren't all firing, and I just thought they were there for the taking actually. And then another goalkeeping error. Do you know what I mean? How many times do you tell a goalkeeper to get behind the ball and it goes straight through his leg? I think once again it took the life out of me, probably all the fans in the ground as well. And that was it. Man United didn't look back. They weren't going to make the second mistake again. And then, you know, like the Fernandes finish was a fantastic finish. Don't get me wrong, but and obviously I think the Lingard goal was just a cherry on the top for them sort of thing. But I don't think it was a 4-1 game. If I'm honest with you, I think I thought we deserved something out of it, and it just seems the way our season's going so far. We do all right in spells and stuff, but we've got nothing to show at the end of the 90 minutes of each of the games, unfortunately, Pete.
And that's the big thing, is that we've got a big fat zero for all the positives. And this is I did touch on this, for all the good performance, we can't keep saying it's a good performance and not picking up enough points, because it's going to come to bite us in the arse, at the back end of the season, where we'll look back at these games and these types of performances and think, we should have done better. The Southampton, Villa, the West Ham, considering we were dominant in the first half against West Ham and then let it slip. We can't afford to do that. Every point matters for us. We're not a Leicester, we're not a Tottenham or an Arsenal where you're going to get enough points to stay in the league. It's just a case of being a little bit more consistent to get into Europe. We're not that. Every point means the world to us. But yeah, you touched on a good point, particularly with the first goal. How the reaction of the players. And it was interesting that Alan Shearer's kind of touched on that as well on Match of the Day, in that Ronaldo is the only one in the box that reacts first. He's already reacted before he's even got near to the keeper. It's just that instinctive reaction. And you talked about experience. We've got experienced defenders on the pitch, experienced defenders that have played in the Premier League for quite a while now. So I would have expected a little bit better. But look, 2 poor goalkeeping mistakes, 2 fantastically well taken goals, and then a really good goal from us. And I would agree with Manquillo. I was pleased to see that he was training today, because I'd start him. He, for me, is the best right wing back. And you know what? I think Liam Kennedy touched on it yesterday on the Steve show.
Yeah.
A lot of teams have been targeting Murphy because they know he's defensively poor. I think they've been targeting Richie as well. And it was nice to have that solidity down that right-hand side for us, because they didn't get any joy down there, particularly in the first half. And it showed massively. But, we do need to move on. We do need to crack on. And we need to move forward. And it's a big game Friday. And this is why we're here. So look, we've got Leeds on Friday, Leeds at home, under the lights on Friday, Sky Sports. They've even got Neville and Carragher going to one of the Newcastle locals before the game. That should be interesting. It should be interesting which one they pick. They've not said yet, but it'll be interesting to see what some of the reactions are, and it'll be interesting to see what their viewpoints are of the club now that everything's kind of falling apart with Newcastle again. So that'll be an interesting watch in the build-up. But look, what have you made of sort of Leeds' season this season? Because what I'd normally ask the opposition really is that Leeds, for everything that they've been talked about, in my opinion, as a team, they've only got 2 points this season, so they're only 1 point better off from us, and we've had an absolute gamble. So what do you make of Leeds going into this Friday, Rich?
I think they've had a harder start this season than what we've had on paper. They've played Liverpool, Man United have been in there as well. But we know how Leeds are going to play. It's exactly like how it was last season. They're going to play front foot, and they're not going to be scared of who they're playing. You look at I've got the fixture in front of us. They've opened the season up at Everton, and Everton have started on fire. Rafa's just done a fantastic job with them. But to fair credit to Leeds, they were 2-0 down and got back into it. Yeah. So, they're never going to rest, sort of thing. They'll always, if they believe they can get from the game, they will do. Then they go on to obviously they had Man United as well, where they got absolutely trounced opening day. You look at the thing, and we actually got a better result at Old Trafford than what Leeds do, which it's nothing we need to shout about by conceding one extra goal less, is it? But then that a dogged, the ground out a draw at Burnley, which we know can be a hard place to go to from at times. I know obviously we went behind there last year, but luckily our changes turned the game around. And to be fair, that game turned around our end of the season last year, Burnley. And obviously Bamford popped up with an equaliser for them a few minutes to go. And I don't know if you watched the Leeds-Liverpool game at the weekend. Leeds did all right in spells and stuff like that. And obviously the sending off with the guy now suspended for our game did change the game a little bit, but Liverpool were more open on the after that. But did 3-0 flatter Liverpool? Possibly not. Marnie had something like 12 shots on goal. So you know what I mean? So it's just the problem we haven't got someone of his caliber to have those. I'd love 12 shots per game, full stop, for the whole of our 11 players, let alone off one. Do you know what I mean? So, no, it's been as I said, it's a similar start to the season, but they've had a couple of harder teams than we have. But anything's possible. I think the only thing that's concerned for me, Newcastle-wise, is Noah Wilson, and we haven't got a natural goal scorer. The newest one we've got after that, obviously Dwight Gale, and for some reason he's just doesn't want to pick him. He's gonna guaranteed he'll probably put Joe Linton up there, and well, we know Joe Linton. You know, so that. I think it'll be a good game though. We had 2 good games against them last year. Do you know what I mean? I thought we were lucky in the home game against them. I think we did match day live on that one actually. I actually did both match day lives with Steve for the lead one last night, because obviously the away one was quite fun, because obviously we had the Leeds guy on, didn't when he was like full of himself, and it was a great show to be part of, but it was just obviously we were on the wrong end of behind. But to be fair, he did tell us that he said several times they were going to get at least 4 against us. Yeah. But then when Hendrick took, we took lead through Hendrick, I thought we might have got something again. But once again, our defensive frailties we collapsed like a pack of cards again. So
Klopp made it 2-2, didn't he? Klopp made
it
2-2, and you thought we were in the ascendancy at that point, and then we just collapsed all over again. And I tell you what, even worse than that, is that we made it 2-2, and then Callum Wilson should have got a penalty because he got taken out in the box.
Yeah.
And they went up the other end and scored, and then just ran riot. Sorry.
Was that the Jack Harrison goal, that one, when he broke, and it was a hell of a finish, to be fair. But it was.
I know what you mean. From our corners, and destroyed us both times. I think at one of the goals. Don't think it was a Jack Harrison goal. It was the other one where they ended up having, it was like 5-on-2 in the box. They had like 5 players in the box from a counter, and we had like 2 defenders that could get back. We were just, I think, fitness-wise, I think we were shattered. We were going through the COVID period at that time. Not to make excuses, it was still a poor performance. But you made some really good points, Richie, in that, this Leeds team could be got at, okay, and Daryl, I know Daryl really.
Yeah, I've just got part of his comments, because he mentioned his previous comment as well about our formation being defence, because obviously we've already been talking about how our defence is a bit of a shambles. I'll just put the comment on the screen.
Yeah.
We, as you touched on in the Man United game, we've got Premier League experienced defenders there. In my opinion, I don't think we have got Premier League experienced defenders. I believe we've got Championship defenders who've played in the Premier League. I think that's the major difference. And obviously I think that's one of the reasons why playing at a Premier League level, we collapse so much, because we have not got players of Premier League quality. I think probably Shaw is, but because he's got nobody of that sort of international quality, you don't become an international player for Switzerland, who've been doing well in qualifications for the World Cup, for the Euros and stuff. You don't play for them. In the last World Cup as well, he was top goal scorer for Switzerland in the World Cup. He was fantastic before when we signed him. Yeah. So that shows he's a quality player, but he's not got quality around him. That's the main issue. We've got no Premier League quality defenders. And, look also the second half of the comment there where he talks about the change in formation. I know me and Chris, we've screamed at this for so long, that with the players that we've got, we shouldn't be picking a formation and trying to put people into a formation. We should be picking a formation for the players that we've got. Now, 4-2-3-1, I have said is probably our best formation, full stop. When we're playing the bigger teams like Man United, play with the two holding midfielders to protect the back four. Yeah. Put Hayden in and put someone else in next to him. I think Shaw, which I also know Daryl mentions a bit later on in there, he's a good passer of the ball, but he would sit there with Hayden. I think that's an absolute fantastic shout, Daryl. But then when we start to play up against teams like Burnley and stuff, then go into a formation where we do what Leeds do, like last year, have a flat back four still, have a one holder, and then play four. So just trap that one extra defensive midfielder, just transition them to more like another number 8 or another number 10, just to give a bit more creative juices in there. We've got players who can do that, and then we could be a good attack and keep them on the threat as well. Because, as I think it was it Yano as well I mentioned, or was it Daryl in the same comment? Sorry, I'm just going through them all. Leeds can be got out on the counter attack, and we are a good counter attacking team when we've got the pace in the team. So we would have a field day if he puts the right personnel in the right formation, rather than picking a formation and trying to fit people into it.
Yeah. You made a good point there, and that actually thinking back to the Leeds game at the home game, because we had a torrid first half. We conceded an early goal, and we probably could have conceded 2 or 3. We were dreadful, but in the second half, we really, really went at Leeds. And if I'm right in thinking, we did end up going for it at the back, and we threw more men forward, and we looked dangerous. Shaw was the one. So it's a great point by Darren, and you've mentioned it as well, Richie. Shaw was driving from the back, driving us forward because he could carry the ball forward and create an attack. Shelvey was doing the same. We need ball players to play through. Now, one of the things that has been talked about a little bit, but could be a key factor on Friday, and I hope it is that Leeds have only got one available centre back, which is Tom Cooper.
Liam Cooper, yeah.
The other ones are either injured or suspended, so that could prove a little bit of a problem for Leeds. Now, Leeds are not the best defensively anyway, but if you've then got a not experienced centre back playing at the back there, if you've got a guy that knows how to score a goal, you've got a potential in. Now, you've already touched on the fact that Joe Linton could play, and I pray that he doesn't. Because if there's ever a game that Gale should be coming on and grabbing as a goal, it's this one. Because I do believe, for all of Leeds' attacking intent, we could nick a goal, and they will concede chances to us. And you've got, and people forget, the likes of Willock that can score a goal from deep. You've got Alan St-Maximin that can cause havoc on the attack. We've got players that can go forward and still create problems. Manquillo, if he's playing, is an attacking threat. Miggy Almiron, who, for me, was outstanding on Saturday.
Yeah, he was.
If he plays at the same level, you got players like that. You got, fingers crossed, he trained today. Ryan Fraser, should really be getting minutes if fit. He's a guy that could really cause some problems, and I think he did in the previous game at Leeds when we played them away. So there's opportunities there, and it really makes for a good game. And I just think Leeds are not flying and not like banging the drum like they were last season, and we've got an opportunity here where they've not got any points, where the confidence is low within that team at the moment. We can exploit that. They don't look as dynamic in terms of their fitness. I think Rafinha looks very, very good at the moment.
Yeah, I like Rafinha.
Well, he's a player that I can see moving on to a bigger team after this season if Leeds kind of finish mid-table again, which is likely to happen. Bamford's not flying on all cylinders like he was last season. Yes, they've got Dan James coming in, but he's not a natural goal scorer. He's just kind of a lot of pace and trickery. Now, there are ins there for us. There are ins there for us in this game. And we need to get something. Like, it's such a massive game. We cannot go 5 games without winning. I don't think we've done that for years now. Years upon years upon years have we gone the first 5 games without getting a win. These games are massive, massive. I think Chris talked about our run of fixtures in December.
Yeah.
We've got Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United. You know,
December is an absolute write-off for
Yeah.
us. It, you know, I've got the fixtures in front of us. I would say
I think we
December we've got Norwich at home, and on the 1st of December, then we've got Burnley. But after Burnley, we go to Leicester, we go to Liverpool, and then we've got both Manchester teams at home before going to Everton on the 28th. That's our December. That 5 game stretch from mid-December till the new year. The way we're playing, we'll be getting nothing there.
Yeah.
And the start of the season that we had, on paper, if you look, we did the double over West Ham last year. So we lost that. That's 3 points gone straight away.
Yeah.
Villa were there for the take without Grealish. Villa weren't great when we played them, and I know we lost down there last year as well. So then we beat Southampton 3-2. And that was a cracking team performance that day when we went out and 9 men Shaw went off injured, and Dummett was his first game back, and he was like an absolute man possessed. Everything that got put in the box, he headed the ball out. And obviously we lost. I think it was a similar result that we had for last year at Old Trafford. We pulled level and got beat again. But we're already off some of the teams that we played last year. We are already 5 points behind if we start the season with the results from last season.
Yeah. So, and this is it. And some people will say, you're mad to kind of match up from last season. The teams are different, blah blah blah. But
I wouldn't.
No, these are the teams that we need to picking up points against, because we've only got sort of 2 shots against these. Some of these teams we've played at home. West Ham at home, who we normally do all right against. Southampton at home, who we've got a really good record against, didn't win either. So we've now already got to pick up points against teams we probably are not expected to pick up points again this season in order to make those points back. And this is what we don't want to do. We don't want to be having to go into games where we're expected to win nothing and expected to pick up either maximum or at least get a point out of these games. So that's the situation where we're in. One other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is and we've touched on it a little bit, is the goalkeeping situation. So, we've talked about Woodman, and he has dropped a couple of big clangers on Saturday. Cost us 2 big goals, poor goalkeeping decisions. He's come out, fair play to him, and he's been open and honest, and he's held his hands up. I respect that in a player. It's quite easy to hide behind other people and behind the club, but he's come out and said it wasn't good enough. But what do we do in this situation? Where do we go in terms of the goalkeeper now? Is it a case of now Darlow's back in training, we bring Darlow in, or would you stick it out with Woodman and give him another opportunity to show that he can play at this level? Because in my opinion, I haven't quite seen it from him yet. He hasn't really been massively tested in games. He hasn't been peppered. He hasn't been hammered for 90 minutes in any of the games. But he still conceded, 12 goals?
Yeah.
So, it's a concern there. So what would you say? What's your opinion on the goalkeepers right now?
I think it's a really difficult situation, because you look at the same situation last year when Darlow was playing and Dubravka was injured, and then Darlow had a decent run to start with, and then the odd little mistake crept in over a few different games. And then I can't remember which game it was. Was it the Man United game again where Darlow had a bit of a nightmare at Man United, and then he brought Dubravka back in after that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
He made a couple of mistakes. I'm sure he made a couple of mistakes, didn't he?
It was the Villa one that got people started to talk for one of the Villa goals where he should have come out and collected it, and it was really, really slow to react.
Yeah, that was the one where he went with his head, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he got nowhere near it. You know, he should have got there. It should have been an easy take. He hesitated. He then went all out. Was nowhere near it. We conceded a goal, and like that was, I think, you know, the start of the downfall, or certainly the start of the fans asking for, you know, Dubravka's fit. He's ready. Let's get him playing now. So yeah, you're right. But I think that I'm pretty sure it was the Man United one where people have said, right, okay, enough's enough, because it was their first goal where it was right down at the near post. I'm not sure if it was Rashford that scored it, but it was right down at the near post. It was an angle where he should have saved it. You know, it wasn't even like, oh, it was a great strike. He should have saved it, and he didn't. It was a poor defensive or goalkeeping mistake. So yeah, that was at the point where enough was enough. And then there was the whole talk about Steve Bruce had already told Luke Edwards, or told people in the media, that he was dropping him before he'd even had a conversation with Darlow, and Darlow found out through the media.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So there was all that there going on. But yeah, carry on. Sorry.
I think the difference with that one was we were bringing an international caliber goalkeeper back in who has delivered for us on numerous occasions. We don't know how fit Darlow is. You know, when you look at when Maxi came back after he had COVID, he really struggled. So I know he's an outfield player, and obviously he's going to be using a lot more energy and stuff like that. So fatigue will hit him a lot harder. But I think that's a little bit different for a goalkeeper. You're still on the recuperating from COVID, and it's all about concentration, because you could be standing around for a long period of time doing nothing. I know it's probably not likely to happen in our defence, in our team, but it's something where you've always got to be switched on. So it cannot necessarily be fatigued physically, but it's more about mental fatigue in that sort of role. So I think the other thing you've got to look at regards Woodman, I agree, I don't think he's been tested properly yet with some of the teams we've had. You know, you look, one of the goals of the West Ham, the penalty, he saved the penalty, and then but once again the defence let him down by not following up on the stuff like that. There's a lot of the goals he hasn't had a chance with. Yes, the two mistakes on Saturday were glaring errors on his behalf, which he, as he said, he came out, he held his hands up. But I think what people have also forgot is yes, he's played in the Championship. There isn't any Championship grounds where you've got a capacity of over 70,000. That's probably the biggest game he's actually been part of as a young goalkeeper. So we don't know. Was he overawed by the occasion, especially with it being ramped up even more because it was Ronaldo's homecoming? You know, there's loads of little factors you can look at. Me personally, I would probably stick with Woodman until the international break, because hopefully after the October international break, we may have Dubravka back, depending on how he is recovered from his, obviously, infection, his operation he had. I think I would stick with him for now. As you said, he hasn't really been tested, so he hasn't had anything to, you know, we can't turn around and say, oh, you could have done better here, apart from the two errors we've already touched on. But bar that, he hasn't really done much wrong. He's been let down more about his defence, I think, than him being. But I think the only thing I would like to have seen him do better, and I think that's only because of how inexperienced he is, and it's a huge step from playing in the Championship to a Premier League team. I'd like him to be a bit more commanding in his box, like coming out for the ball and stuff. But to be fair, I don't think Darlow was very commanding of his box either. I think Dubravka is a brilliant example of that. He's so vocal. You know, he tells his defenders where he wants to be. He'll tell them if he's going to come and stuff like that and collect the ball. You know, I remember that when he played on his debut against Man United when we won 1-0. That day was, you know, for lots of it, he made some cracking saves that day, but he also was so demanding. He did the basics of being a goalkeeper really, really well as well. You know, he caught everything. Every time a cross came in, it looked like he had glue on his gloves. You know, there was nothing. It was just an immaculate goalkeeping performance. And unfortunately, I think Woodman hasn't had that. You know, he's probably because you know, it's a high level of football. He's played in the Championship, and yes, he had the Golden Gloves last year for the Championship, which in the, you know, how many games they play, and some of the teams that, you know, there's a lot of Premier League quality strikers that are in that league as well, and to do that's not a mean feat. So he's got the ability to do it. He's been talked about a future England international, which I actually believe he can be. Obviously, we know the story that Arsenal have had him on the radar for a long, long time as well. So these clubs aren't interested in bad players. It's like, Jamal Lewis. A lot of people are saying, what about Jamal Lewis is terrible. Jamal Lewis is, Jurgen Klopp doesn't want you if you're a bad player.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It just seems to be a lot of our players. I know there's a couple of chats been cutting in about how Rafa's defence was fantastic, and then Bruce has got the same defence, and how they've all collapsed. Daryl's touched on it, Yano's touched on it as well. It can all be all about organisation. It can all be about belief from your manager. They instill in you. Bruce doesn't seem to instill confidence in anyone. And I think Woodman probably needs just a little bit of an arm around him this week, a little bit of a reassurance, and just say, look, I'm sticking with you for the foreseeable future. And then we'll see where we go, because that'll mean so much to Woodman. If he's dropped straight away, that's his confidence shot.
Yeah.
He'll probably be out. I reckon he'll be gone on loan. If I'm honest with you, I think he'd be probably gone on loan by the time, if the window's still open for him, I think he'll be gone on loan. I think he's all confidence will be shot.
I think, I'll be honest, I think I would like to see Darlow come back in. Now, you're right in what you're saying in terms of commanding. That's the one thing that I think lets Woodman down. And arguably, it's an area that let Darlow down. But Darlow last season showed that he had that in his locker. There were games last season where he was very commanding. And it takes fans don't realise how much pressure that takes off your defence. If you're having to defend literally on your line, that puts pressure on you. You've got more ground to cover. You've got more defensive areas to be worried about. If you've got a goalkeeper that can come off his line, between the goal line and the penalty spot, that area can be covered by the goalkeeper. That's a massive chunk of area that you don't have to defend as a defender. And it makes a massive difference. And Dubravka does that like no other. I don't think we've had a goalkeeper in the history that I've supported Newcastle in 30 years that has been as commanding and as critical as Dubravka has been. And we saw elements of that from Darlow. And that's probably my thinking of why I bring him back in, because I think we need that. Leeds do have an aerial presence, and so do some of the other teams that we're going to play in the weeks to come, with the likes of Watford and Wolves. So we need to be making sure that we are commanding our area and that we're tough to beat from set pieces. You could see quite early on against Southampton that the only way they were going to score was by lumping balls into the box. Aston Villa was exactly the same, and they're the big areas that let us down. Woodman, for all his shot stopping, he needs to be a full package if he's going to be an international goalkeeper. And at this moment in time, he's not quite there. There's also questions about his relationship with Steve Bruce. And this is made for an interesting point in what you mentioned about Bruce potentially putting an arm around him and saying, you're my goalkeeper, keep working. Because it would make the world of difference to him. It would make him feel, you know what, I can do this. And it might give him that extra 10%. But I've got a feeling that Bruce is going to go, you're out. And that will just deflate Woodman even more so. And more so, it will probably make him even more determined to leave the club. Because I've been convinced for a while that Woodman wants to leave the club. But because he's tied down to a contract, and we're at this position where we don't allow someone to go out on loan, particularly if they've got a year left on their contract, without signing an extension. So I think he feels like he's compelled to sign it in order to get football that he needs. But I think ultimately he would be quite happy to leave. And I think at some point he will. I don't particularly think we'll see the best of Freddie Woodman at Newcastle, which will be sad to see, considering, like you've said, Richie, at the age of 18, he was dubbed a future England goalkeeper, a guarantee that he was going to be in England number one at some point. And I know Gareth Southgate really, really rates him. I think he might even be his godfather.
He's his godfather, yeah. He's Andy Woodman's his best mate.
So even more reason why I think he wants to go out and play football and make sure that he's number one, whether it's with us or somewhere else. So it's an interesting situation. But I know I'll just put this up. I know you're on comments, Richard, but Jano's put Woodman's 24. Meslier is 21, and you're absolutely right. Woodman is 24 now. He's still young in goalkeeping age, but he's been around football a long time now, and it's only recently, the last 2 or 3 years, he's really been playing football. So he's probably maybe 2 or 3 years behind in his development. I think if he'd have got his loans that he should have got, maybe under Rafa Benitez, and before that, he might be where Meslier is now in terms of playing regularly at Premier League level. So it goes back to the point, we're not in a position to be nurturing players through. And I've said this for a while. I said the same about Matty Longstaff. We need points now. We need players that are ready to go right now. So it sounds harsh, but we need a player that is good to go. And if Darlow's good to go, then he'll come back in. I believe on Friday. But we'll just switch for a second to Leeds. So obviously, like we said, Leeds have not pulled up any trees yet, so to speak. But we know that they've got decent players. We know that when they're on it, and with their high press, with their attacking intent, with their pace, which they've got, and which was what the work rate which Bielsa's created. Who do you think are our main threats that we need to be worried about come Friday from a Newcastle perspective? Who do we think that leads the players that are going to hurt us?
I think that the player that always stands out for me every time I watch him, I think Rafinha is a hell of a player. I really, really like Rafinha. He scored a fantastic goal against us last season at St James's. He opened the score for about 15 minutes. He just looks to be really wants to get on the ball. He wants to drive forward. He wants to create something. He wants to be able to try and get a goal. I agree with what you mentioned earlier on. I believe at the end of this season, he won't be a Leeds player for next season. I think he'll have moved on. And do you know what? He's the sort of player that if a takeover was to, miraculously go through, he's the sort of player I would want to go for. He's just broken into the Brazil squad as well. If it hadn't been for the game being abandoned, it was his first squad that he was going to be part of and stuff like that, and the way the quarantine, so he didn't get to go over. But that goes to show how far he's come on in the last season and a bit with Leeds. But I just think he's a fantastic player. I hadn't heard much of him before he came to the Premier League, but I've been really, really impressed. Rodrigo on his days can be a handful as well. He's had a bit of a hitty-missy sort of spell, and obviously he was one of the major players that Bielsa bought last season, and he thought would, have that La Liga class brought to the Premier League for them and stuff like that. So he on his day. Jack Harrison's a really good young player as well. Yeah. And Bamford can be a handful, as he said. He can score goals and stuff like that, and he'll always be a threat, Bamford, because of the service he's got. I don't think, I know he got his England debut against Andorra, and to be fair, I don't think England played to his strengths against Andorra, so he didn't really get much of a look in. But we know what he's capable of. His Leeds has probably been his most prolific clubs in his career. He was loaned out a lot alongside different teams. When he was at Chelsea, he was a bit of a journeyman. Every season he was somewhere and stuff like that. And obviously settled a little bit at Middlesbrough, but obviously he's gone to Leeds now. So he can be a threat on his day as well, because he's a really, he's a really strong forward as well. But his movement's good for a big man as well. But he's also got that striking instinct where he can be in the right place at the right time if you need to, which is a prime example of the equaliser against Burnley. He barely got a touch on the ball, but it was the right place at the right time to put it just the other side of the post, and that's all that matters. And good goal scorers don't care. He was in the middle of the 6-yard box. That's, you want those little poaching goals occasionally and stuff like that. So, and I think threat-wise, not necessarily an attacking threat, but a threat to the dominance of the game. And I think this is probably going to be a pretty straightforward. Calvin Phillips, I just think he's quality. The lad is he's mature beyond his age. He looks like he's played in the Premier League for years. I saw quite a bit of him last year. I was a bit surprised how rushed into the England team, the squad he was. I didn't think he would have made the team for the Euro. I thought he was always Southgate would have went with Rice and Henderson, because that's how he used it to the qualification. And I thought he might integrate Phillips into the starting lineup for this World Cup qualifying campaign. But then obviously he hired him in the deep end in the actual Euro tournament. And to be fair, he was quality. He's quite a weird one. I see him as like a holding midfielder. But then you see him sometimes when he plays for England, and he's doing a lot more forward work. He's doing that, a more number 8 type of role, because Declan Rice takes the holding role a bit more, and he's just got so much potential. I think he's another player that if a takeover went through, would be someone I'd look to go for. I think he's a fantastic player, but I think he'll be beyond us. It would not surprise me if he was at somewhere like City next year.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said this, because on the train journey up on Saturday, I travelled up with a couple of my really good mates who are Man United fans, and that was part of the debate on the way up, is that Man United have been heavily linked with both players for quite a while now, both Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips. And I sort of asked them the question, which one would you prefer? And they kind of both went for Declan Rice, and I can see why they've gone for Declan Rice, because they need that defensive midfielder to kind of solidify the team, because they don't rate Fred. Matic is on its way out, various other reasons. But if you'd have asked me 4 months ago, I don't believe I would have put Calvin Phillips anywhere near that bracket of player. I even questioned why he was in the England squad before the Euros. I could never see it. In my opinion, I just couldn't see why he was being picked and what the fuss was about. But I have to say, he's 100% won me over by watching him in the Euros, by watching the way in which he plays. He's all action. You're right, he can play defensively, but he can also play box to box. So in games where you don't need 2 defensive midfielders, he can push forward. You saw him so many times for England on the edge of the area, getting shots from deep. He's got that in his locker, and he's got that ability. But I like
he'd be perfect in that system that we were talking about at the start. Yeah. When you play that 4-2-3-1 against the bigger teams, you would sit with say Hayden, because obviously he's the only other player that you class as a holding player, or Shaw if you wanted a bit more of a ball player from that position as well. But you could then leave the other holding player there if you wanted to have him as the number 8 going forward in the other games. So you're not necessarily changing the personnel, but you're changing his role, and he's proved he could do that. He would be ideal, but you never, it's not going to happen. So we might as well get out this pipe dream. So
no, you're not. But like you're exactly right in what you said. He's a terrific player, and I do believe he's another one like Rafinha. Rafinha's a top level player. I mean, I watched him for 15 minutes. Just watched him for 15 minutes on the game against Liverpool, and you know what? He reminded me a lot of Ben Arthur. He made a little mazy run in the first half, and it was kind of like he was on the right hand side, and he did these little step overs, cut inside, and it just brought back memories of Ben Arthur. I just thought he played exactly the same way. He's just lovely. They could not handle him. Robertson was all over the place, and I've never seen Robertson like that. Robertson, he just couldn't defend him. And I just thought he's such a talented player. But Phillips as well is a player that, if Leeds don't kick on this season, if they don't make improvements to where they finished last season, I can see him getting pulled away. And like you said, a team like Man City could pick him up, but also a team like Man United, who also, have the money to be able to attract a player like that.
I think, do you know what I was thinking was really interesting about, we're on about this game. And someone's mentioned about, obviously, I think, who was it in the chat who mentioned about how we would finish under Bielsa. No, it was this one here from the True Faith lads. And so, just before we go into that a little bit, I was going to say it's a big game for Leeds as well, because if they get beat on Friday night against us, are people going to be calling for Bielsa's head? Are the media going to be, like everyone's saying now, Newcastle, everyone wants Bruce out, this, that, the other, which wouldn't change if we got beat or didn't get 3 points on Friday. But what would happen for Bielsa, do you think, Pete, if they don't win on Friday night?
I think if we win on Friday, I think there'll be murmurs. There won't be a full sale, like it would be a Bruce out type thing. He has to go. There wouldn't be outpour from the Leeds fans that wanted him gone. There won't be, because he's brought them back to the promised land after God knows how many years of lurking in League One and the Championship. So I think there's a level of loyalty to him because he's taken them somewhere. I think it reminds me a little bit of Rafa Benitez. Rafa Benitez brought us back from being nothing and gave us hope. Okay. So I see the similarities there. I don't think he will get this pelters like a Steve Bruce would, because for me, Bielsa's a top level manager. He's a top level manager. You look at the teams he's managed, you look at what he's done at those teams. He has made those teams better. Those teams always finish off better than when he found them. And he's done exactly the same with Leeds. Can I see him there long term at Leeds? No, because he's not a manager that stays very long at the clubs that he's at. He goes in there, he's like a whirlwind. He whips them up, he makes them better, and then leaves. The one thing I've got about Bielsa that's not related to his managerial future is the point that I've just made earlier, is that he doesn't spend long at his teams. Now, if you look at how Bielsa sets up his team, they are hardworking. They are runners. You look at the players on paper that he has in his team, you wouldn't look on paper and think, yeah, I want him. He'd be great in our team. He's better than what we've got. A lot of the names are not like that, but they all play a part. They all play a very specific role in being a successful team. And that's why Leeds have not gone out and bought all these high profile players. They could have got a Ross Barkley. They could have got maybe a Joe Willett. They could have got a number of other players and brought them in, because they would have been able to attract them. But Bielsa is very particular on who he signs. He signs a very particular type of player. Dan James is another one, is an example of that. He's been wanting Dan James since the Championship. He's wanted him for a long time. Why? Because he's dynamic. He has abundance of pace. He's a hard worker. The only problem with Bielsa is that you cannot ask players to maintain that level of work rate over a course of 3, 4, 5 seasons. He's been there a while now. He's had 2 seasons in the Championship. He's had a season in the Premier League. That's 3 seasons that the bulk of that squad have had to work intensively hard. Now, what I've seen from Leeds this season is that they look to tire in games more often now than what they did before. And I think, as well as that, a number of injuries have started to set in because those players have played at their maximum for so long. That's my only issue with Bielsa long term at Leeds, is that I think some of those players will start to crack. And when they start to crack, results will start to dip. I think he'll see that, and I think he'll opt to leave. I don't think he'll get sacked. So I think it'll be interesting to see by the end of this season how it pans out with Bielsa and Leeds, because I think he'll maybe look for a way out in terms of leaving them as well as he found them, or better off than what he found them. But that's just kind of my opinion on Bielsa. But it's a great question. It's a really, really good question, that. So cheers for that, True Faith.
Just I was going to the actual original question for True Faith. How do you think Newcastle would finish under Bielsa?
I think under Bielsa, Newcastle United, and bearing in mind, I don't think it would have been necessarily about signing players. I think Bielsa would have made Newcastle play very similar to how Leeds are playing right now, because that's how he sets up his team. He wouldn't have asked for high-profile names, but he would have asked for names that have certain abilities that make this team better. A little bit like Benitez did. Benitez had his team set up with it was a 3-5-2, and he wanted players to play in that position. And although he didn't get his first choice, his second or third choice still got us playing and moving us up the league and pushing us in the right direction. I believe that Bielsa would have done that. And I honestly believe that with Bielsa in charge at this club as well, we would have loved him just as much as we'd have loved Rafa Benitez. And I think that would have taken us to the next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we need a manager that's a bit of a mix of Benitez and Bielsa, don't we? Like Benitez was very, very organised defensively, and there's been a running commentary in the comments about, was Rafa's defence good? Was Rafa's defence shit? Whatever. I always thought that we did when we had Rafa in charge. We didn't tend to get beat by a lot if we got beat. We were really. I always felt we were organised, but we didn't have the support at the attacking end of the pitch for Rafa. So he was literally always going out trying to nick games. Whereas I believe if Rafa had the attacking players, I think we discussed this a couple of times on Match Day Live last year. If Rafa Benitez had the attacking players that Steve Bruce has got, bear in mind he's still got the same defensive players because we've made no changes there. How would Rafa Benitez do with this team? I think we would be pushing. I still think we'd probably be making those 10 to 11, 12 places, possibly to the lower end of the top half.
Yeah.
Just with the same investment. I know one of the big bugbears was Joel. We all knew we didn't want him because that 40 million could have went a long, long way for developing that team. Would Maxi have still come in? We don't know on that one because he's not really a Sam Maxon sort of player. But I think what Benitez would look at now, how if he came back in, I think he would see how important Sam Maxim is to our team going forward as well. So he would sort of incorporate that, and I think Sam Maxim would run through a brick wall for Benitez, if I'm honest with you. Yeah. He's because of the way he's shown to the fans on social media and how much he loves the fans and he loves the club. If he had if we had that manager that we all loved, I know that some don't get us wrong, some fans didn't like Rafa because we played shit football, but I still believe if he'd been backed, I think we would have seen a different Rafa Benitez Newcastle if he'd been backed. We all, for some reason, Ashley and Charlie have always backed the wrong manager every time. McLaren, they backed him. They've given money to Steve Bruce. Do you know what? You see that dossier that Benitez used to rant on about he had this dossier of tens of thousands of players for each different position, for each different role. If you'd given all that money to players, just said, look, you just deal with it. You just tell us what you want. If we're going to do it, this is what, just say, look, that's your transfer budget. This is what you work with. I still think you would have seen a hell of a lot different. We just never backed them. And that was the main problem with Newcastle. It's been like that for a long time. I'm going back even to when Dalglish was in charge, where you had a team qualifying for the Champions League. I always think that if you've got do the Formula One car analogy, right? If you've got a car that is on the podium, there or thereabouts every race, going for the Constructors' Championship, you fine tune it.
Yeah.
You don't dismantle it. And we've done that far too much. We don't fine tune it and add to what we've got and replace, as we know now, a championship defender. We've got the same defenders since when we came up, bar Shaw and Kraft, but they're not in the team under Bruce every single week now. It's the people that have come in. We are literally starting with a championship defence pretty much every single week, and that's the problem. We're not progressing anymore. We're just standing still, and that's the problem. It's always been under this ownership. We just, you know yourself, Pete. You know what I mean?
We always end up imbalanced. So how long have we been crying out, like you've mentioned? Well, how long have we been crying out for a striker or a guy that could score his goals? Like we've had Hosselu, we've had Joe Linton, we've had Andy Carroll, come back to the club. We've had Dwight Gale that scored goals in the Championship, but not really pulled a penny trees in the Premier League. How many times have we cried out for a striker. We got that on loan in Rondon. He scored his 12, 13 goals that season. What do? We let him go to China because we don't want to pay the buyout clause, 16 million for him. We end up getting Callum Wilson, but Callum Wilson's then constantly injured. But Callum Wilson is scoring goals, so we improve that area. We bring in St. Maxi, Ryan Fraser, but then all of a sudden the defence is now aging, and now we're imbalanced again the other way, whereas the defence was the strongest part of the team before. Is that there's always an imbalance there. We can't seem to sign a number of players in more than one position to provide balance for the team. But you made a sort of a really good point. I mean, Rafa Benitez, for me, in my opinion, Rafa Benitez gets Joelinton playing a hell of a lot better than he's playing now. He gets Jamal Lewis playing a hell of a lot better who's playing now. He gets more out of Richie. He gets more out of Longstaff. He gets more out of Hayden, in my opinion. And
I don't think that's just your opinion. The proof's in the pudding, because he's had Longstaff, he had Shaw, he's had Richie, pretty much. Look, even Lascelles, if you want, Lascelles was a different defender under. He was a lead. He was. We go back to the Southampton game this season when we got relegated, and he went. And he just took out of his own dressing room, went in that dressing room and just rollicked everyone.
Yeah.
That's something that we don't see anymore. But that shows how much this team has regressed under Steve Bruce. It's not just one player that's done it. It's pretty much every single player that was there when Rafa left for that season.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. I think we're bang on the same page tonight with our opinions of where the club's at. There's been some really good comments as well. In the chat. Daryl is made some great points again. So he's made a point about the manager. If we get any manager with a plan, be it Bielsa, Howe, Pulis, Allardyce, to an extent, or Potter, then we easily finish top 12 with our eyes closed. St. James's Park will be a fun place to be. And you know what? You couldn't, I mean, Pulis, maybe I would, Pulis and Allardyce, I've got question marks about, but the Bielsa, Howe and Potter, I do think we improve as a team and we play better football. Why? Because they have a philosophy and a way of playing. And that's what we lack right now. We've got players, okay, yes, some are aging, yes, some are constantly injured, but I do believe with a way and a style of playing, we can incorporate that into the team. We end up playing better football. And and it's that simple. Steve Bruce does not have a way of playing. He sets the team up, and it's a case of let's hope and pray that we pick up a result. There's no style of play. There's no there's no structure to the way in which we play. It's all kind of just instinctive on the day. That's why you can never predict a Newcastle result, because you don't know. With us, you could maybe say we're going to play this way, and I think against Brentford we'll win because we play a certain way, and we'll back them into a corner. Just like, for example, a Leeds will play well against the Norwich because they'll press them high and they'll create problems. You can say that about a team like Leeds. You can't say that about us because none of us know how that team is going to turn up and play. It's a bit like a Sunday league. You put a team out and you don't know how they're going to perform. It's just a case of potluck. These guys have a philosophy and a way of playing, and I believe that we kind of improved massively with another manager. And I've made the point before, I'm not looking for another Rafa Benitez to come in and take over Bruce. I'm looking with another manager that's 10% better than what we are currently, because a manager that's 10% better gets a hell of a lot more out of these players right now. Truls mentioned if we got Bielsa, half the team is so old that they would have to retire. Look, first and foremost, Truls, and I think it's a more than valid point, but I think first and foremost, if we got Bielsa in as manager, our fitness levels completely increase by at least 30, 40, maybe even 50%. So what you would see is a bigger, fitter, stronger team that's going out there against these teams. You wouldn't get a second half collapse like you got against West Ham. You wouldn't get a collapse like you would against Aston Villa. You wouldn't get players switching off which means a goal's conceded on half time, like we did at Old Trafford. You just wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get the Jesse Lingard goal in the 90th minute, because these players would be a lot fitter, a lot more switched on. And I think, player for player, I think some of our players are better than what Leeds have got. So I think Bielsa would have something to work with. But you're right, there are one or two aging players. But it's an interesting debate there. And again, it's another great question. Seb, I'm going to shout out Seb because Seb's popped on tonight. I feel the Rafa narrative has expired now. We should move on from it. Would you agree with that, Rich? Would you think that the Rafa narrative, the fact that media, journalists, fans keep referring to Rafa?
I think regards coming back, yes, because we know that's never going to happen. That was one of the things that always hung over. It wasn't he was always going to come back under the takeover, but that's gone now. So regards to that, yes. But the problem with the Rafa narrative is he's our last comparison to Bruce with pretty much the same squad. So I think while that's going on, until Bruce is either gone or a takeover goes through or whatever, I think that Rafa narrative will always be there with those players, unfortunately. Do I want them back? No, not now. I think like a lot of people, I believe that we need to move on now. He's moved on. We need to move on. But that narrative's always going to be there while Steve Bruce is in charge, with pretty much the same set of midfielders and defensive players that the club.
Yeah. No, great point. Great point. Seb again mentioned, not sure about the result, but I'm convinced Leeds will score. I'd be surprised if we don't concede. With the way that we've been going at the moment and the way this season's been going, it wouldn't surprise us. I think it might be a case of, it's got the makings of being a high goal scoring game. So it might be a case of who's going to score the most goals in terms of who picks up the 3 points on Friday. I just think, both defenses aren't great. Both defenses have conceded a lot of goals. Both teams have not necessarily scored a lot of goals either. So, it could well be that it's a case of, a complete shootout between the two. Yano's made a point. Calvin Phillips shows how limited the Newcastle players are. To compete with one player, we need three. Hayden for tackling, Shelby for passing, and Longstaff for I've got no idea. You know what? It's a great point.
Longstaff's for the age comparison.
Yeah, definitely.
Similar age.
Yeah, because they really are, aren't they? See, if you think about it, where Longstaff was under Benitez and where Calvin Phillips was at Leeds at that particular time, and look at the trajectory at the point in which Longstaff got his injury away at West Ham, when it was the Longstaff Rice kind of debate. Longstaff stayed still and gone backwards now, but look at Calvin Phillips has come in, and now those two are playing together, Rice and Phillips, where it could quite easily have been Rice and Longstaff. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if Longstaff had gone to Man United when they were talking about the 30 million bid for him, when he was having that outstanding season when Rafa brought him in, you don't know. It's all about ifs and buts and what happened. But obviously, as we know, he's regressed so much, like the majority of the Newcastle team have under Bruce. So I still think another manager would get a lot more out of him. I still think there's a player in there somewhere. It's just how we get that player back out.
Yeah, definitely. Dave Harrison, welcome tonight. Yeah, he said Steve Bruce has taken a good team and totally ruined it. I have to agree with that. You look at the players; they've completely dropped off, massively under Bruce. I think we're struggling now to see a player that's actually made progress under him. I think we had last season when we talked on the Matchday Lives, Richie, where we were maybe saying, Matty Longstaff is made progress because he's come into the team under Bruce, but look what's happened to him since. He's been completely decimated.
Yeah.
Yano said our defence was crap under Rafa, but interestingly, Daryl's come back to that and said, I disagree. So a little interesting conversation there. He feels that our defence under Rafa was great. When we lost it was not by much. Always damage limitation against top teams, 1-0 or 2 at best. Not 4 or 5 like Bruce. But I'd agree with that. I'd agree with what Darryl said. It was very rare, and I think it was only really at Anfield where we would lose by 4 goals. We would very rarely get hammered in games, and that was the key. You know, going to teams like Leicester, who were on the rise, and winning 1-0, like that's unheard of now. I know we had a great result against them last season, but
do you know what? It's funny you mentioned the Leicester game, and I've mentioned this. God knows how many times over the last few years. There's a clip that always does the rounds on Twitter, and it's that 45-second spell at Leicester where we won. Yeah, and it was tackle, and it was just, you know, they were playing for the shirt as well. They were playing for the manager. They were organised. The press was there. It's just everything that Newcastle aren't now.
Yeah. You know what? I will never, ever forget that game, because that game was the first time I'd ever been at a game live, Leicester away, where Newcastle had won. So it was a massive moment for me, because obviously being a Leicester lad, born and raised in Leicester, but supporting Newcastle, I'd never seen Newcastle win at whether it was Filbert Street or the Walker Stadium, now the King Power Stadium. Never seen the win there. So for me, being in that stadium and watching that was such a moment for me that I'll never forget. Equally to that, when that moment happens that you're referring to, I always get goosebumps when that clip pops up on Twitter.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because there were fans around me with tears in their eyes watching that after that moment, because there was so much passion. We cheered every time they went in for a tackle. We made that team, who were very dominant that season. They were a good side, Leicester were, that year. And we made them look average because we worked them into the ground. We never gave them a second. We looked dangerous on the attack. It was honestly, you could see at that moment that we were going somewhere. And you know what? The next season, we went there and we did it again. And we won again, and we won 1-0 that game. And that was the live game, the Friday night on Sky, where Benitez did this kind of famous talk that keeps popping up on Twitter about where this club could go. And they're just moments that I'll never, ever forget. They're just big, big moments. Never forget them. Amazing, amazing, amazing. You know, so I'm really glad we brought that up, because they brought me back some good memories. They have, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Last one before we get our special guest on to finish the show. So who can we realistically get after Bruce? Eddie Howe? Also, what realistic expectations do we have for Willock in terms of a goal return, considering his last season's form? So really, really good question. And you know what? We'll hold that question for a second, because I want to bring in our guest who's made a late appearance. But first, it's only right that we give him the intro. I've been looking forward to this. I hope I get it right, because I'm not really good with these intros. 1 second. I love it. I absolutely love that. It never gets old. Welcome to the show, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Evening, Keith. You all right?
Not so bad. Are you as well?
I'm all right, mate. You?
If Newcastle had a license, what would their license to
be? To kill us.
Yeah, I was just about to say, license to kill the fans. But
fans, license to destroy.
Oh, you're absolutely spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on. Well, thanks for joining us, mate, for the show tonight. Obviously, it wouldn't be right to have a show without a few stats in there with regards to how we fare against Leeds United. So, is there any positivity for us, Keith? That's what we're looking for right now.
There is positivity. Pre-2017, there's positivity. I just go over some stats there. I mean, I'll start with the negative first. Newcastle, as we know, are winless in the last 3 games against Leeds. So it's 2 defeats. The 2 defeats last year and the 1 draw in the promotion season. But other than before last season, Newcastle's last 11, they only had 1 defeat. You know, they had 7 wins, they had 3 draws. There's always a fixture I would look forward to. I don't know about you guys, but I used to love Newcastle Leeds games, like going back to the early 2000s. What thrillers, you know, there was a real rivalry there. And I think Freddie Shepherd, when he was chairman, he really used to build up the rivalry.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, can you hear me there?
The volume's a little bit low. I can hear you, but it's quite low. I'm not sure.
I'll just see if I can increase my volume. Is that any better there? Is that any better?
Yeah, a little bit better. A little bit better, mate.
Thank you. But it was always a fixture I would look forward to. I think the ownership really used to stoke the rivalry up there. And yeah, a great record before 2016-17. And I think the only consolation in this is Leeds have started really badly.
Yeah.
You know, I think they had that draw against Everton and they were hammered off Man United on the opening day and they lost the last game or so. So there is that hope that you've got 2 teams in bad form and that it is at St. James's. So I'm hopeful on Friday night, and I'm touching every bit of wood that Newcastle will get a point. Newcastle will get a point on Friday night at least because they need a point. I just dread to think what will happen if we get a result like we did last year, where it was 2-1. It's going to be one of those jobs where it's going to have to be like a bit of a... You remember the Villa game last year? Remember the 1-1 where it was late on with Lascelles? It's going to have to be like one of those sort of jobs where you don't see a win coming or a result coming, but it just comes.
Yeah.
That's what Newcastle need at least, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really that confident about Watford away. I know Newcastle got a abysmal record down at Vicarage Road, and they just need to get something for the morale, really. And those results, I don't know how you guys feel, but the Newcastle have conceded 12 goals already, and the worst like defensive record in the Premier League. And it just seems to be a reverse of what happened at the end of the season, where they were finishing games stronger in the last days, getting all those late goals, and through Willock, and now the fitness over the summer, and they just seem to be like losing it in spells quickly conceding a glut of goals, which is costing them games.
I would agree. I agree with you. It is a huge concern. It was, for seasons before, it's a case of, we just couldn't put the ball in the net. We just didn't create enough chances, but we stayed relatively solid at the back. Now we're just flooding goals. There's an argument that we're creating more chances. I mean, we created more chances at Old Trafford on Saturday than we have done for many a year there. But, we're conceding more goals now, so we're having to score more goals in order to win matches, which is just typical for us. It goes back to that imbalance that I was talking about with Richie a minute ago. That we always have an imbalance as a team. We never can quite keep one thing solid and then build on another. It's either we build on one thing and the other thing kind of falls apart, and it's just we're just constantly fighting with ourselves to try and build a team that's good enough. And it's only really with Rafa Benitez in recent years that's been able to provide that little bit of balance. And like you've said, I'm not really confident in Bruce finding that balance anytime soon. So we are living on hope. We are having to touch every piece of wood that we see in order to hope that we can pick up a result or in some way, shape or form from game to game. But what do you think about it, Rich?
I think that we'll get something out of the game on the weekend. I think one thing that we'll probably guarantee there'll be goals. I don't know, Keith. I unfortunately going to answer the door, but I don't know whether you touched on was there a good chance of over 2.5 goals in the game on Friday, because we all, as I said, I think we've got the amount of goals that tends to be between the two teams. There's always goals there, so I think that I'd just like to be on the end of a positive one for a change. You know, I'd happily sneak a 2-1 or something like that. It's just obviously with Callum Wilson missing, we haven't got, and his reluctance to play Gale, who's our next natural goal scorer. Are we going to get 2 goals? You know, I think, you know, we might nick one because, you know, we've got the mercurial talents of Sam Maxon. Depending, you know, you might actually be on the same wavelength when setting someone up for a change, or you never know, or you might do something as the wizard he can be himself. But no, I think there'll be something. We'll get something from the game. I'd love it to be 3 points, but I think we'll probably get a point, if I'm honest.
I think just their game, just adding to what you were saying there, Richie, I can always see 2-2s and 4-3s. I always remember those classic games, 3-2s against Leeds, and always thrilling games. I think the last 0-0 draw, I think we're just going way back, like you're talking the mid-90s. I think they had a 0-0 down at Elland Road even, you know, so there's always packed with goals in, but really, I mean, ASM's probably the best chance, really, attack and threat, and I think he had some success in the games last year against Leeds, you know, but really, what are the other attacking options available? It sort of feels to me like with Gale, it's really unfortunate. I don't know what he's done, but I sometimes feel like Santiago Munoz is going to got more chance of a game than Gale has at the minute, you know.
Well, I've got it.
Yeah. I take it you actually make me and Kudo Becker the guy who played him in the film. I take it you meant there, Keith, not the one we've just signed.
Exactly, honestly.
For the one that we've signed, though, from the clips that I've watched of him, and there's not many, but the clips that I've watched of him, I'm playing right now. What have we got to lose? What have we got to lose? Honestly, you know, he could turn out to be another Matty Longstaff and surprise us all and maybe nick an important goal. So
it's like you said, Pete. What are we going to lose, right? We've got a Brazilian who plays up front who can't score a goal. So we just changed to having a Mexican up front who can't score a goal if it goes like that. So we haven't lost anything if it was. Do you know what I mean? But at least the fans would give him a chance and get behind them.
Well, what's the betting of playing Munoz up front for the same amount of games as Joe Linton has in the last 3 years? And what's the betting that he scores more goals than Joe Linton does during that same period? So
I think if Keith was a bookie, right, he wouldn't take odds on it.
I'm waiting to hear Joe's stats on Friday on the Fab 4 on the other channel. You know, I'm just looking forward to hearing those stats because honestly, they get worse and worse every week for Newcastle this season, don't they?
Oh, awful.
It's
averaging 3 goals a game. Do you know what I mean? If you 12 goals in 4 games, it's
It's I think when you see the odds and the bettings that are coming out for Newcastle, I think it's just a reflection of how bad things are at the moment at the club. It's such a bad period for us. I honestly, and it'd be interesting to get your views on this. And it kind of links in, you know, with the managers, because there's a question that Seb had that I want to kind of ask you before we go. Is that I can't remember in the near 30 years that I've supported this club a worse period in our club's history during that period of time. I just can't think of one. We've had some bad moments. We've had some really bad seasons where we got relegated, and you know, really down moments. But I can't see a worse period of football at a time than right now. What do you guys think?
I remember a little bit of the late 80s when we went. I'm talking a little bit because I was like 8, 9, 10 then. So. And I was starting. I would pretty much go to the home games quite a bit, and the football was awful then, and that wasn't pleasant to watch. But I think at least since then, this is the worst I can remember. Even when there was, you know, we went down in the Championship under, you know, the last 2 times under Mike Ashley. There was always like things to take as a positive, you know, if we to possibly getting back up next season. You know, last time we went down, we had Rafa, and you know what I mean. And you know, everyone, the way we started, first 2 games of that season, everyone was going, Rafa doesn't know the Championship, does he? You know, we got beat at Fulham, and then obviously we had a bad result against Huddersfield at home as well, but that obviously we look back and now, and that's all forgotten about. We were straight back up. There's just no positivity whatsoever. There's nothing where you can even have that bright shining light at the end of the tunnel. There's just nothing with Bruce, nothing with the owner who doesn't want to be there. There's nothing with having a managing director that might as well just sit at home and do jack shit, because he pretty much does nothing else. There's nothing at all to be positive about. I can't remember, and so this possibly could mean it's probably the most negative time that I remember, is having the life sucked out of me for the club I love so much. Where I'm a big American football fan as well, and I actually get more pleasure watching that than it, because my team wins a bit more than what we do, unfortunately. Do you know what I mean? So I still have in it, but I go from one extreme to the other, and that's the only bad thing. I'd love to have, I'm not expecting us to win every single game. I would happily, just say have a team that we always say it, or the majority of fans have said it numerous times, especially over the last 4 or 5. We just want a team that tries. We just want a team that has the heart that all the fans do. There's 52,000 in that stadium every week, and there's God knows how many fans watching on TV or can't get a ticket who would die to wear that shirt and be in part of that match day squad on a Saturday. And it's hard watching a club that we've all got that much passion about have nothing good for us to, to have the whole life just sucked out of you. It's like I try and get my son to watch a match with us. He's a Newcastle fan, but he just point blank refuses to watch it because he's bored watching our team, and it's hard. My eldest just got to university last week, and he's never been a football fan. And he was sitting in the student union the other night, and he turned around and he texted us just to wind us up, because I knew I was out on and I wasn't going to respond to him. And he turned around and went, "I'm going to buy an Everton shirt. I'm an Everton fan now." Not because of Rafa. He just really enjoyed that second half spell where Everton were, blew Burnley off the park. Yeah. And he just thought, he's never really watched the match for a full 90 minutes. He's always, dotted in and out of the room, or he's been working in a pub and stuff like that. He just saw something that he's never seen from Newcastle before. A team that entertains, a team that tries. And to me, that I was more demoralised about that than the fact that he said he liked football. I was, in a way, I was like, he likes football now. I was pleased about that. But I could understand why he was saying it. And it's just a shame that my team has never been able to deliver that for him, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I completely see where you're coming from, Richie, and I agree. I cannot remember it. And I remember getting in Newcastle in football in like the mid 90s. Really, to be honest, looking back at the history, it was like looking through DVDs and videos and seeing how bad things were. And even though when Newcastle had spells where they were down in the leagues and they were struggling maybe under Dalglish, Hullets, and then obviously it's never been as bad as this. This sort of reminds us, this spell of results, it reminds us of like 91, 92 before Keegan came. But, the team was different there, Ordealist. There was a lot of like attacking, there was a lot of high scoring games. So there was a lot of goals in the team then. It wasn't a problem scoring the goals, it seemed, and also the way the club was run, like, there was a lot more connection with the fans, even though the fans weren't happy with the board. There was the closer to the fans, whereas now nothing seems to happen for weeks and months. Like there's, it feels like the fans are starved on that side of things as well, the connection with the club, and it's just not there. And Richie's right. I mean, I've been thinking about Everton a lot recently, and that start Everton have made under Rafa, fantastic spell of results. They're already up there in the top 4. And, they've got the Bramley-Moore Stadium that they're working towards in 2023. They're the second club in their city, and there's a lot more optimism there. so much more. Whereas with Newcastle, there's not a trace of it. You know, you're hanging on to maybe it's ASM staying fit, or maybe it's Wilson staying fit, and you're hoping for some form of takeover, which will bring in a new era. But this has been the way it's been for at least the last 4 or 5 years now with the club.
I have to agree. Like I say, I can't remember it during the time that I've supported the club being in such a bad moment. There's such a huge black cloud over the city of Newcastle, and it is the city of Newcastle. It's not just over St James's Park, because ultimately what's happening at St James's Park affects the city. It affects the people that live there. So it is a black cloud over the city right now, and we need some positivity that's going to put an end to this. This will be considered a real sort of black mark alongside Newcastle's history that, you know, fans long term will never ever forget. And hopefully we can look back at this and kind of, you know, smile to some extent, because that would mean that where we go next is going to take us to another level. It's going to take us to maybe competing and maybe even winning a trophy that can sort of eradicate all the years beforehand where we've had to suffer without challenging. So that's my hope for what happens next. But again, you know, there's no guarantees there whatsoever. But I just wanted to finish on this one last question. We'll answer it really quickly, and it's from Seb. And he said, who could really realistically get after Bruce? Eddie Howe? Also, what realistic expectations do we have for Willock in terms of a goal return, considering his last season form? So, what do we think? Who do we think could come in realistically if Bruce does go? And it's not likely to happen anytime soon. And what do you think in terms of how many goals realistically Willock can get for us this season? Start with you, Keith.
Eddie Howe keeps getting banded about, but I'm not sure if he'll come north, if I'm brutally honest. I'd love to see it, to be honest, because there's the connections there with the former players that he had, and I'm not sure about his relationship with Fraser, but, you know, Wilson, you know, Graham Jones as well. There's a relationship there, so I would like to see it, but I have to be honest and think I'm not sure if he'd come north. I know he went north for Burnley and he wasn't there long either. I don't know if he's hanging about for a certain type of job now, you know, maybe a higher mid-table, like just below Europe type of job, you know, like a Villa sort of type of job. But Chris Whaler's not working a job, is he, at the moment? So, you know, he would more fit the bill. You know, he got Sheffield United up and in their first season kept them up. So it's that sort of, if he's going to bring in anybody, if Bruce were to go, and he wouldn't rely on Jones, if he wouldn't put Jones in the job, I think it would be more like Whaler sort of fit. And there's lots of other like obscure choices. I mean, it's weird. You've got lots of other managers who haven't been in work for a few years. I'm sure you could bring out, you know, the likes of Phil Browns or somebody like that, get them up from the lower leagues and just give them a job. But that's honestly my thoughts. Chris Wilder might be the best of the bunch. In terms of Wilson goals, I'm hoping he isn't going to have the spells out, even though he's, you know, injured. I think realistically maybe 15 goals, and maybe 10, you know, 10 to 15, somewhere in the region of that, really.
What about Willock? I think you mentioned about Willock in terms of his goal return. What do you think?
I think more or less the same, really, because I think that was a brilliant run he had last year, but it was almost like a surprise ace in the pack that a lot of people didn't see coming. And I think maybe teams might adapt to that. They've seen Willock in the last 8 games, and I think it was really remarkable what he did in those games. But how, you know, he's just getting his form now. So I think best case maybe 10 a dozen from Willock. I'd love to be wrong, and I'd love to see 15, 18 goals, but you know, I'm being realistic here. I'm thinking 10 to 12 goals from Willock from midfield at best, and at worst maybe 5, 6.
Well, I'd definitely take that 10 or 12, that's for sure. But Richie, if Bruce left, who do you think realistically could come in? And Willock, how many goals do you think he could probably get for us this season?
I'll start with the Willock one because I think that's the easier one to answer.
Yeah.
I think a realistic sort of. We've got to get our realistic heads on here. You know, someone mentioned in the chat earlier on, there's always a chance it could be another Kennedy, where he's a one-season wonder. And then obviously that makes us look like idiots because we played just over 20-odd million for him.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll go like that. I do think he'll be an integral part of the team, and I think he proved that when he was here the second half of last season. He was a lot more reliable than what Kennedy was, even when he did do all right at Newcastle. I think he'll get at least 8 goals. And that's a decent return for a number 8. Realistically, attacking the box. He's, that'll probably put him up there as one of the highest scorers in the club, which is, of course, the days when you're having numerous players in double figures. You know what I mean? We're happy now if someone gets 8. So I think that's roughly whereabout he's going to be. The harder part of that, of Seb's question, is who would you replace after Bruce? And the reason why it's harder was 12 of the people turned the job down before Bruce accepted it. So there's 12 mediocre managers, realistically, we're thinking here, who wouldn't even want the Newcastle job. So I think you're probably going to be looking at the 2 people that Keith mentioned. I think you're going to be looking at Eddie Howe. There is mainly because of a lot of the Bournemouth connections. I'm hoping the Ryan Fraser one wouldn't be as bad as what people think. I think it was more strained towards the end because pretty much Ryan Fraser down tools after Project Restart. Because he was hoping he was going to get that big move to Arsenal or Spurs, like he'd been linked to, the season or so before. But he knows how to get the best out of, Wilson, Fraser, and that's what we need to do. We need to be getting the best out of these players. I think, was it the 16-17 season, I think it was, or the 17-18 season, where they had the most assists in the Premier League. Was it since? Was it Sheeran Sutton or something? Yeah, it was.
He got 16 assists. It was only Eden Hazard that season that had more assists.
Yeah, so we all know there's that relationship there. So it's just, I've always said this since Fraser came. It's getting them both on the pitch at the right time. Yeah. We had Fraser coming on the pitch if Wilson wasn't there, and or we would bring them on to bring crosses on and take Andy Carroll off when he played his few games. There's never ever been a plan of action with them realistically. So getting him on the pitch, I've always thought he'd be fantastic on the right hand side of a 4-2-3-1. Personally, but obviously the good thing is he's both footed, so he could switch across as well. So if you wanted to put him on the left and switch Maxi over to the right, I think it would be ideal. So I think Eddie Howe would suit our personnel well, and we would also be the biggest club he's ever managed as well. So that's the pulling effect that we've got for Eddie Howe to come to us, to possibly make him come this far north. That's always been a bit dubious. He likes the South Coast. He wants to stay in the South, but can Newcastle still have that pull? I believe we probably could. I think Chris Wilde is a good shout as well. He's a fantastic coach, and at the minute, the players that we've got need coaching. They don't need a manager. They need coaching. Hate to go back and say it again about Rafa, but Rafa used to constantly coach throughout the games. He would do a lot of hands-on training during training. He was very hands-on during the match, and bellowing instructions out to whoever was there. We know Bruce doesn't do that. He'll sit there with his hands like this all the time, or he's turning around and looking, or he's letting his assistants do the team talks and tell people how they're going to take penalties in penalty shootouts and stuff, and just let everyone else crack on about it. So, yeah, I think Wilde is a good shout. But I think the one that I think got mentioned in our WhatsApp chat, Pete, was I just don't think it's the experience, but he fits in with the budget and stuff like that. And I know he gets the club. It was, I think Lee Bowyer came up when I was chatting the other day, but I just don't think he's got the experience. He's the cost. You know what I mean? If he fits the Mike Ashley, not having to pay much over. Lee Bowyer would jump at the chance because since he's come into management with Charlton, he's only managed at clubs where he's played. I think he played at Birmingham, he played at Charlton. He'd love to manage Newcastle because people loved him and hated him Newcastle, but he always wore his heart on. You look back at that incident with Kieran Dyer when they both got sent off at half time for fighting and stuff. But he had that passion, and that's the sort of passion you want to get with. But he's also matured when you listen to him in press conferences as well. He's got his head screwed on now to be a manager, to get across the points he wants. And he's obviously doing it well because he turned Charlton round from where they were. They were, at a takeover Maya disaster situation, a bit like what we are, turned them round. He's now gone into Birmingham, which once again they've been in disarray for pretty much the whole time they've been in the Championship. They've always been thereabouts, bottom half, hovering over the relegation zone. And you look at them now; they're top 6, I think they are in the Championship now, and they've had a really good start this season and stuff like that. So,
great point that you raised there.
Yeah,
if Ashley can't see himself not being at the club in the foreseeable and he's staying, I think he could be on Ashley's radar definitely. And plus as well, he doesn't have a poisonous, toxic relationship with Ashley because I think he left the club before and Ashley was coming in as well, so he doesn't have any history with Ashley. He's a Cockney lad and he's got a connection with the club as well. So I think you'd see that potential, and he did a fantastic job at Charlton, just like what you were alluding to, because they were in a chaos, but he somehow managed to get them promoted, and they were staying up as well when he was there at Charlton in the Championship. So I think that's a great shout.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's a pretty good shout. But just before, I know Pete's going to probably round up the show now, and I've been keeping an eye on the Champions League out the corner of my eye, and this goes back to when Mike Ashley if he'd sold up back in 2008 to the owners of Man United, Man City, we could have been beating Leipzig in a 5-3 thriller tonight. 8 goal thriller. Do you know what I mean? And now we've got to sit and watch dross every single week. It's just
I never forgive Mike Ashley for that. That deal was ready to be done. Shaitman wanted Newcastle first before he went to Man City. Man City was second choice, and we could have been that team. We could have been multiple Premier League champions, multiple cup winners. Like you said, the game tonight with a £100 million player, Jack Grealish, in the team is, and that's why it's even more frustrating that this current takeover. We won't get into it tonight. It's even more frustrating why that hasn't gone through, because that would have given us our second chance of having a team to be or a club to be proud of. But look, for me, just to close it out, Eddie Howe for me is the one. Chris Wilder was the second choice, but you've got your problem now in that right now, what manager is going to want to come to Newcastle under these current restrictions? Seeing how Bruce has been treated and seeing how the fans react towards Ashley and Bruce, what manager in their right mind would want to come to Newcastle? They'd only be coming for a payday, and that's about it, unless they got their restrictions lifted. So it'll be an interesting now. A lot of managers have come and gone through Mike Ashley's regime and have been chewed up and spat out. And a lot of them have never really been the same since they've come through Newcastle. So I do believe it gets to a point where enough is enough. And if Mike Ashley was to stay at the club, something would have to change in order to get a different manager than Steve Bruce in. But Willock, I would say between 6 and 10 goals he'll score this season. I saw a resemblance of his end of last season form at Old Trafford on Saturday. I saw the quality that he had, the running in his legs, the ability to retrieve the ball. I think he retrieved the ball more than any other player in the Premier League this weekend. I think with nine times he retrieved the ball, and he was very, very good. So I see some positivity, and I hope he gets off the score sheet on Friday. But quick predictions, guys, before we end the show. Keith, what are you going for Friday?
Well, I'm going to go with my heart here rather than my head. Both sides in bad form, so I'm going to go 1-1.
1-1. Okay, gets us a point on the board. Richie, what are you saying?
I think it'll be a score draw, but I think it'll be goals. I think you're probably going to look at, if as long as we can get our shoot with, I think we're looking at like 2-2.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm positive, but I think we'll win. I think we'll win on Friday because we have to. I think it'll be either a 2-1 or a 3-2 victory for Newcastle. And I think there'll be goals in the game. There'll be chances galore. I think it'll be a tough watch at times. I don't think us as fans will have many fingernails left by the end of the game. But I do believe that we'll get the result this time.
I think what also depends as well as, you know, one thing we haven't even touched on tonight that we hope might have a factor on the performance as well is if this protest goes ahead properly, that could have a major. We haven't even touched on it, and to be fair, I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad we talked about football, but that could have an effect on stuff. We don't know how that's going to go. So, you know, it might amount to nothing. It might, you know, with the cameras being there, it could be anything. Do you know what I mean? So
let's see what happens. And with Neville and Carragher in the area, in the region, it might just, you know, spark fans into showing or certainly venting their frustrations of how the club is being run at the moment. So
I just think as long as the fans remember to support the team on the pitch, there's a right type to protest stuff before the game. You know, if there's no play on the pitch at a certain due to an injury or half time, that's the perfect time. Get back. The lads still need you on the pitch. There's still we should still be that 12th man that the team needs when we're at home. You know, save the Bruce till half time before the game's over, but get behind. What we've still got to do is we've got to get behind the lads during the game, because we can help make such a difference to them.
We will not. In order for us to stay in the league, that will be based on us winning games at home. So if you're going to the home game, get behind the fans, like Richie said, because that's our best chance of winning matches. And if we're winning matches at home, we're more likely to stay in the league. It's as simple as that. So with that being said, I'd like to thank Richie for joining me and hosting the show with me tonight. It's been a pleasure. I had some great chats.
Yeah.
Some great interactions from the chat as well. And Keith, that intro needs to come back at some point, so we'll be in touch again and we'll get you back on for some stats. Hopefully
for the 30th of September, Pete, for the release of the film. 30th of September, special for the 30th of September for the release of the film.
Yes, let's do it. Let's get it done. 30th of September, that big release. But yeah, we'll get you back on. We'll look to sort something out for the Watford game, no doubt. But a pleasure as always. Thank you guys in the chat. You guys have been completely spot on tonight. And as always, we do love playing away.